This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Gunmen kidnap primary school pupils in Nigeria's Kaduna State. Libya's interim government sworn in. And Somalia receives first batch of COVID-19 vaccine. Hello and a warm welcome to Africa Live. I am Peninah Karibe. Joining me with the business headlines is Uche.
Thank you, Peninah. And here's a look at what's coming up on Africa Live Biz. Egypt to replace old car engines with locally manufactured ones that operate on natural gas. And South Africa launches a photonics facility to convert light into energy. Of course, all that coming up within the program. For now, back to you.
Thank you, Uche. Let's begin the hour in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where at least a dozen people have been killed in an attack on a village in the eastern part of the country. According to witnesses, armed men attacked the village of Bulongo, which is situated around 30 kilometers east of Beni, on Sunday night. The raid has been blamed on the Allied Democratic Forces militia. It is feared that the death toll could rise. On Wednesday, the United States designated ADF as a foreign terrorist organization after accusing it of links to Islamic State. The militia has killed more than 800 people in the eastern DRC. To Nigeria now, and 3 students abducted at a primary school in Rama village in Kaduna State have escaped. According to one of the teachers, the pupils escaped when the bandits attempted to steal cows and motorcycles in a nearby village. However, nothing is known of the whereabouts of 3 teachers abducted alongside the pupils. The gunmen attacked the school on Monday and kidnapped pupils and teachers. Locals say the victims were attacked as they arrived at the school in the morning. This attack comes a day after an unsuccessful mass abduction at a secondary school in the same state. Meanwhile, 39 students are still missing from a Thursday kidnapping incident at a forestry college. The latest incident is the 5th mass school abduction in Nigeria since December. Earlier, we spoke to CGTN's Philly Haza on Saturday's foiled kidnapping attempt and the wave of abductions targeting learning institutions.
Getting these incessant, happenings of kidnappings, scare, and all of that is really, really disturbing, and it's unfortunate, it's sad. But in this case, we're thankful that the security operatives were able to rise up to the challenge and on time, to forestall this attack. It was, like you said, on a government-assigned school at the Kara local government area of the state. And according to the Commissioner for Internal Affairs, Internal Security and Home Affairs, Samuel Aruwan, he says all of the students, 307, are safe. There was also an attempt on the senior staff quarters of the school, but the security operatives were able to engage the criminals, and currently they're still on hot pursuit of these criminals to try to locate their hideouts and possible other gang members. It's really unfortunate, the fact that we're seeing most of these kidnappings occurring in the northern part of the country. It of course used to happen in the southern parts, but different state governments, security agencies have stepped up their response. You'll notice the south-west region have also been able to initiate their own local security system, local police called Amotekun, and to a large extent we've seen them also apprehend some criminals. The security system is actually stretched. There are lots of ungoverned areas as well in the northern parts. And so, apart from the insurgency that we're tackling in the northern region, we're also seeing these kidnappings, we're seeing herders and farmers clashes. It's just a whole lot that the government security apparatus is faced with at the moment.
And joining us now for more on this is Patrick Agbambu. He is a security consultant in Lagos. Patrick, thank you for joining us tonight. We've had a series of kidnappings in northern Nigeria since December last year. What exactly is happening in that region?
It's a very terrible situation right now in the region, and not just the region, but most parts of the country in Nigeria. There are adoption of school children. That is the worst that can happen, because parents are worried and disturbed now across the country whether their children are safe while trying to learn and improve their lives. So it's actually very, very troubling, and it's scary, to say the least.
It is scary indeed, Patrick. So why is it that northern Nigeria has become such a prime target for these kidnappings?
Yeah, several reasons. One is that there have been many years of neglect of most of the communities, and there are no government presence in some of these communities and local government. The third tier of government, which in Nigeria, which is the local government, seems not to be active, and so there are so many ungoverned space or governed space that these bandits have been hibernating and have been staying and operating. But I think this recent wave is because they have found out that it's very, very lucrative. The government played into their hands last year when some money was paid to some people who adopted some children. And that has triggered a lot of bandits wanting to continue because they've seen it as a very lucrative business. It's a low risk, high yield business for them. And so it's something that they believe they can do and get some quick money or get attention of government to this. So that really is one of the reasons of it's now a business, a venture, a lucrative business, and there are so many ungoverned space. Then thirdly, the security agencies are overstretched because there are pockets of security challenges across the Federation, both in the south, southeast, southwest, and the northern part of Nigeria. So the Nigerian police cannot handle it. The Nigerian military have been called in, and they themselves have been overstretched. So really, these are the reasons, and these bandits have seen it, that they can actually commit this crime, adopt mass children, and go away with it.
All right, Patrick, thank you for explaining it to us. Patrick Agbambulai for us. Now, Libya's interim authority took oath on Monday morning. The entire cabinet and the presidency council gathered in Tobruk City for the swearing-in ceremony. The interim government will be preparing the country for what should be the final phase of transition to an elected authority. Here's Adel Mahri with more.
At last, Libya has an administration that enjoys recognition from all rival factions after years of division. Interim Prime Minister Abdelhamid Dbeibeh, his entire cabinet, and members of the Presidency Council have officially assumed their roles as interim authority after taking oath in Tobruk in front of Parliament. Massive challenges lie ahead of them as they attempt to hold general elections this December.
Libya is a state that doesn't control its territories. Neither Eastern nor Western governments have full authority over the mainland. There are power cuts, healthcare and education have deteriorated, and Libya is now classified amongst the failed states.
Dbeibeh is leading the first unified government Libya has seen since the downfall of President Gaddafi in 2011. Maintaining the current ceasefire and achieving security for all citizens is a prime task for the interim government. To achieve that, however, the new prime minister must convince generals who have been fighting each other for years to work together under one management.
The basic challenge is unifying the armed forces. If the new government manages to bring the trained military forces from the east and the west together, this can achieve both security and stability and will ease all his tasks. Unifying Libyans needs time. There's a huge wound. This was a civil war. There are victims from both sides that need social reconciliation. This won't come about without a strong state that can guarantee the outcomes of any reconciliation.
To begin economic recovery, the government of national unity must maintain a steady flow of oil production and exportation. One of the promises Dbeibeh made to Libyans is to fairly distribute the oil revenues among all geographical regions. He will be also challenged with unifying the nation's financial authorities, on top of which is the central bank. Unity must turn from a title for the government to actual practice among all Libyan institutions. Dbeibah must successfully achieve all of that and organize the first free elections in Libya's history in a little over 9 months. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
And after the appointment of Libya's first woman foreign minister, a major milestone for women. CGTN's Chaum Gono with more on that.
When Libya's new Prime Minister, Abdul Hamid Dbeibah, recently announced an interim cabinet, one person stood out. Her name is Najla El Mangosh, whose efforts in breaking the glass ceiling in the largely patriarchal Libya are now being recognized. She is a lawyer who was part of the Transitional Council, which briefly governed Libya in the aftermath of the 2011 uprising. Now she's joining 4 other women in the interim government. Her appointment to the key position, Foreign Ministry, scores fast for Libyan women. Women currently make 15% of the cabinet, but that could be scaled up when deputy ministers are appointed. However, Najla El Mangosh's appointment is drawing mixed reactions.
I was so happy to hear about the women being appointed to the government. It is great news for all Libyan women, and we are very happy and hopeful with this new government. I hope that the role of these women will have a positive impact, and we hope for the best from them.
I don't care who leads the government. The most important thing is whoever leads it does it correctly with the good of the country in mind and the willingness to look after the country and to manage it for the people, the poor people who have been suffering for years from ignorance, hunger and poverty.
We are done with war. This is our first. All I want is the right person to be in the right position, whether a man or a woman. Of course, it's very exciting that there is a woman in such a position, and I think they're up to the challenge and that she will contribute to leading Libya in the best way.
Women belong in certain places, but for a woman to be in a position leading the affairs of an entire people, I don't think it will be suitable. There are certain places that need women, and others that do not. But in a position where a woman would be expected to handle the affairs of a population, I don't feel it works.
The appointment of the new cabinet comes in the wake of the signing of a ceasefire deal between Eastern forces led by Khalifa Haftar and the then government of National Accord that was based in Tripoli. Chaum Gono, CGTN.
And staying in the north of the continent, as the Syria crisis reaches the 10-year mark, millions of refugees face unprecedented hardship due to rising poverty, lack of opportunity, and the impact of COVID-19. Millions of Syrian refugees had to flee the country. Yasser Hakim looks at the journey of those who migrated to North Africa and their impact on North African states.
Most of the Syrians who escaped the war to North Africa have traveled mainly to Egypt and Libya, and much smaller numbers to the rest of the region. According to the UNHCR, there are 150,000 registered Syrian refugees in Egypt, but the total number in the country exceeds 500,000.
Egypt dealt with this refugee crisis in a totally different way. It did not treat them like refugees, but they were immersed into the community like any other residents with rights and duties. No refugee camps were established, nor any special security or political procedures against them. They live normally within the population, have jobs, own homes, perform their daily activities without any restrictions.
Experts say Syrians have actually added value to the economy by investing $800 million in several sectors, such as textiles, restaurants, and SMEs, making use of the freedom to own assets and open businesses. Libya is a different story. Most of the 250,000 Syrians there targeted the North African country as a springboard to migrate to Europe via the Mediterranean Sea. The UN says 50,000 have been successful in doing so in the last 10 years.
The idea of settling down in Libya in this dangerous security situation is considered a big risk, which many wouldn't take. Therefore, I don't see many Syrians planning to stay in Libya, but only a channel for a European destination.
With a decade since the war in Syria, experts believe some of its refugees in North Africa have been a cause of concern, like in Libya. Others, however, have managed to settle down in countries like Egypt with secure jobs and businesses and without negatively affecting their host nations. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
It's 1:15. You're watching Africa Live. Let's take a short break. Coming up. The International Court of Justice begins hearings on maritime boundary dispute between Somalia and Kenya. And the Netherlands halts use of AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine after reports of blood clot issues.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo, Juba,
Johannesburg,
Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. The International Court of Justice says it regrets Kenya's decision to withdraw from a maritime boundary case with Somalia. Public hearings opened on Monday, but Kenya refused to attend, citing perceived bias by the court. ICJ President said the court would go ahead with the hearings and would use written evidence provided by Kenya instead. Kenya and Somalia have disagreed over which direction their border extends into the Indian Ocean. The area is thought to contain large oil and gas deposits. Kenya argues the sea border should be drawn parallel to the line of latitude, while Somalia says it should be extended in the same direction as its land border. Kenya has since pulled out of the case. The hearings will run until the 24th of this month. Earlier, we spoke to Dr. Nkeru Scorcher about the impact of the case. She is a solicitor of the Senior Courts of England and Wales.
Now, of course, there is definitely a link between non-appearance and enforceability. But we have to understand that in the case of a non-appearance, the court still has a duty to adjudicate this case based on law. And the law on maritime dispute is well established. There's a three-stage process the court has to go through where they draw a provisional line, they check for relevant circumstances, and then they adjust for an equitable result. So the court has a duty to ensure that the law is put forward. Now, of course, when we talk about enforceability, here we have a problem of political will. Now, the main factor in any maritime boundary dispute is that the parties work together to agree. For example, there was a case with the ICJ as well between Cameroon and Nigeria. And we know that the judgment was agreed and was put forward in 2002, but it took over a decade for the line itself to be drawn. And this had to involve both parties working together with the assistance of the United Nations General Assembly, the Cameroon and Nigeria Miss Commission. So yes, courts can proceed, but in terms of enforceability, the court does not have a mandate to enforce its ruling. And so the parties would have to work together, which you need anyway, regardless.
Meanwhile, Somalia's government has issued a global humanitarian appeal of a looming food crisis. The government has warned that 2.5 million people are currently at risk of hunger, and the situation could worsen if no urgent humanitarian intervention is put in place. Seasonal rains have failed and have left crops scorched and livestock dead. The rapid rise of COVID-19 cases has impacted the country's economy, making the situation more complicated. The recent locust invasion in the country is also expected to worsen the situation.
As you are all aware, the 2021 expected rains didn't come. We anticipate the situation to further deteriorate in the coming months. That is the cause of the recent shortage of food and water. This is further aggravated by the economic impacts of COVID-19. There's already a drought in Gedo region in Jubaland state. It has also hit other areas by the drought in Hishabele, Galmadag, Southwest, Puntland and Somaliland.
The problem we face today is mostly water shortage, but we are also on the brink of food shortage for both people and livestock. This is our country, and we understand the sequence of events when it comes to drought. We know the sign when the rains are due. We also understand the signs of the drought. That is why we have expertise.
The Netherlands says it has suspended the use of AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine. The government says the jab will not be used for at least 2 weeks as a precaution. It will delay the rollout of vaccinations in the country, which had scheduled around 290,000 injections from the supplier in the coming days. The move follows reports from Norway and Denmark, where healthcare workers who had recently received the vaccine were hospitalized for blood clots. Ireland, Iceland and Thailand have also suspended the use of the drug. German authorities say they will discuss the AstraZeneca issue with the European Medicine Agency this week. The German Health Ministry says it is taking reports very seriously and constantly examining data, but will continue to use the vaccine for now. Somalia has received its first batch of COVID-19 vaccines. The 300,000 Oxford AstraZeneca doses, which arrived in the capital on Monday, will be used in the first round of the vaccination campaign. Health workers, security personnel and immigration officials are targeted in the first phase of inoculation. The Horn of Africa nation is also expected to embark on a sensitization campaign as it grapples with threats posed by the Al-Shabaab militant group.
This is the first batch, as you both said, sirs. We will try to make sure our best that it reaches the population who needs most in premise. That is the frontline workers, health workers, immigration, police, teachers, people, elderly people, and those with comorbidities. I'm sure you will be working with us closely to get more doses in the country.
It is only the first of future batches that will address other vaccine demands for Somalia. We encourage people to take the vaccine. We encourage people to continue with all possible preventive measures: hand washing, mask wearing, social distancing. COVID is still a serious threat. We need to stay vigilant. The vaccine will help, but it is not the only solution.
A Chinese-constructed and stocked referral hospital has been at the center of Kenya's fight against COVID-19. The facility, which was commissioned in late October 2019, has been the country's main isolation center since the virus was discovered in Kenya. CGTN's Enoch Sekolia has more.
These doctors and nurses have been helping patients battling COVID-19. Before 2020, they had read books and studied theories about coronaviruses. But for the last 12 months,
you've not had any symptoms, eh?
They have been helping real COVID-19 patients, with some falling sick themselves. The virus was first detected in Kenya in March last year. And since then, I have followed these healthcare workers as they interact and treat people battling the pandemic.
These are our isolation wards.
How many do you have?
We have 8 isolation wards, whereby we have put both confirmed patients and suspected patients. They are here, but we have separated them. The confirmed are on one side and suspect are on the other side.
Medicine is a calling, and I know, being a frontline healthcare worker, it's my duty to my fellow human beings and to other Kenyans.
Kenyatta University Teaching, Referral and Research Hospital has been Kenya's primary facility for isolation and management of patients. The pandemic hit Kenya just 4 months after the hospital opened to members of the public. The hospital is the brainchild of former Kenyatta University Vice Chancellor, Professor Olive Magenda.
We had the vision of coming up with a very good hospital, which I think we have. What we didn't know is that maybe at a time like this, it would really, it would be very useful and very timely.
This hospital is the most modern, up-to-date facility to be seen in East and Central Africa in recent times, and it has provided the government with space for the isolation and treatment of COVID-19 patients.
The 650-bed hospital is equipped with state-of-the-art medical amenities, and the facility, constructed by the China Jiangxi Corporation for International Economic and Technical Cooperation at the cost of $99 million, is changing Kenya's healthcare. This was made possible after the Exim Bank of China funded its construction and supplies. The hospital employs 40 doctors and more than 100 other medical staff.
We really hope to make it one of the world-class hospitals. But right now, I think we are concentrating on this particular crisis that we are in.
The facility specializes in oncology, trauma and orthopedics, and renal treatment, among other services. The facility currently has 24 ICU units for COVID-19 patients, 8 for patients suspected of having COVID-19, and 16 ICU beds for patients who do not have coronavirus. These units are supported by an oxygen plant that has been the facility's lifeline during the pandemic. All the oxygen used in the hospital comes from here. Oxygen therapy has been key while managing COVID-19 patients. The facility has also supplied oxygen to nearby hospitals that do not have the capacity to produce their own. Enoch Sikolia, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
Tunisia has launched its COVID-19 vaccination campaign. On Tuesday, Tunis received 30,000 doses of Russia's Sputnik V. Vaccinations have started with healthcare workers, soldiers and security officers, adults over 65 and people with chronic health problems.
Maharzia Hammami is the first Tunisian citizen to get vaccinated. The nurse at Badu Basic Healthcare Facility volunteered and encouraged all citizens to join the national vaccination campaign.
I worked at COVID-19 centers, intensive care units and the airport amid the pandemic and during the lockdown. The virus poses such a threat that I was the first to register, to volunteer and to get the first dose of the vaccine. It was approved by the scientific committee at the health department. The vaccine is both safe and efficient.
Members of the COVID-19 task force revealed that only 537,000 people have so far registered for vaccination on the e-platform evax.tn. However, this number is likely to rise as the health department is launching a public awareness campaign to encourage people to trust the vaccine.
Given the number of people who have recovered from the coronavirus, an estimated 60% to 70% community immunity can be achieved if Tunisians join the vaccination campaign. There is no scientific reason to avoid vaccination. It's necessary in order to stop the pandemic and resume a normal life.
Authorities announced that within 2 or 3 days, 15,000 health workers will be vaccinated with the Sputnik vaccine. The head of Tunis Emergency Medical Assistance Center warned that the number of infections is on the rise in Tunisia.
The healthcare system was affected by the pandemic. Some 12,000 medics and paramedics were infected with the coronavirus. 55% of my staff tested positive in a few months. Only yesterday, my colleague tested positive. There is no way out of the health crisis without vaccination.
The Pasteur Institute in Tunis announced that several centers have been equipped with cooling equipment with a temperature of -20 degrees to properly preserve the vaccines. The institute also revealed that the DNA sequencing operation is going to confirm or deny the infection of a 62-year-old man with the British variant. The first coronavirus vaccination operations for the benefit of vaccination teams and frontline health workers kicked off in 25 vaccination centers across the country. Military health personnel and security forces will get vaccinated next week. Abdel Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Let's now cross over to Ucha for the day's business news.
Thank you, Peninah. And coming up on Africa Live Biz. Egypt to replace old car engines with locally manufactured ones that operate on natural gas. And South Africa launches a photonics facility to convert light into energy.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself. If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Well, let's start off in Egypt. The country is planning to replace old cars with locally manufactured ones that operate on natural gas from the end of this month. Now, the green car incentive will cost the country up to $500 million. The first phase of the initiative seeks to replace 250,000 old cars with natural gas-powered ones in 7 governorates, including in the capital, Cairo. Here's Yasser Hakim with the details.
Natural gas is quickly becoming the main source of power for vehicles in Egypt. Already there's an ongoing process to transform 150,000 cars from fuel to natural gas and dual engines. And now a new initiative is set to commence that's aimed at replacing cars that are 20-year-old or more with new natural gas-powered vehicles. To encourage car owners to join the scheme, the government will provide a $3,200 green incentive discount for the new car and an offer of 7 to 10-year repayment plan with low-interest bank loans. China is primed to be a main player in the initiative.
There are 9 vehicle companies working on this initiative. There are Chinese cars that are in the plan, such as Egypt GB, out of partnership with China's Jerry Motor. Another brand called the Geely is also in the project. It's a reflection of the strong cooperation that exists with China's Dongfeng, which has also become the first electric car local manufacturer in Egypt. The price of Chinese cars is attractive, and more Egyptians have been depending on Chinese cars in the last few years because of their quality and price.
So far, nearly 90,000 people have registered to replace their cars out of a targeted 250,000 in the first stage of this plan.
I support the initiative because it reduces pollution and also abides by UN Sustainable Development Goals. Moving to natural gas protects the environment and therefore our health will also benefit.
Natural gas is economical, as it's a lot cheaper than fuel. I will save a lot of money from using natural gas.
The first phase of the initiative will cost the government about $500 million, but experts say the economic benefits are far more superior than failing to adopt the plan.
In addition to making use of the country's natural gas reserves and cutting on expensive fuel imports, the initiative allows for more local manufacturing since the new cars will have 45% of the assembled parts from local components. In turn, this supports the spare parts manufacturing while the feeder industries will become stronger.
In the meantime, the government has announced it's building around 1,000 natural gas stations over the next 5 years to add to the existing 200 that have already been commissioned and another 150 that are planned to be open in April. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Meanwhile, Tunisia is investing in wind farms as part of a long-term energy plan to lessen its dependence on fossil fuels and, of course, diversify its energy sources. Now, authorities in the North African state are aiming to increase energy production from renewables to 30% by 2030. From Tunis, here's Adnan Shaushi with the details.
UPC Renewables and the Climate Fund managers have partnered to develop a 30-megawatt wind farm in Sidi Mansour in Tunisia. According to the National Agency for Energy Conservation, the total capacity of renewable energy deployed for electricity generation is estimated at 391 megawatts. This represents 6.6% of the overall electricity generation capacity in Tunisia, against 3.2% in 2010. Wind power accounts for 61% of this capacity.
The future of electricity generation in Tunisia relies on wind farms and renewables. By 2030 or even earlier, our objective is to increase the role of renewables in electricity generation to 30%. Tunisia has the natural resources to implement this ambitious project that will increase energy efficiency.
The projects for electricity generation from renewable energy were carried out by the Tunisian Electricity and Gas Company. Photovoltaic solar energy accounts for 23% of the total capacity of renewable energy production, which is around 300 megawatts.
Tunisia aims to expand the market for decentralized photovoltaic systems. Local companies do not have the financial and logistical means to develop and deliver large-scale projects. We urge the state to look for public-private partnerships to increase solar energy generation in order that we can reach our energy autonomy.
The state-owned Tunisian company of electricity and gas, STEG, says 90% of the country's electricity is generated from natural gas. 60% of this natural resource is imported from neighboring Algeria. The reliance on fossil energy has been costly. Whenever a barrel of crude oil jumps by $1, STEG's cost of power production increases by a staggering $45 million.
Investing in wind farms and renewable energies is a structural solution for the Tunisia state and STEG. The cost of the fossil fuel for energy production is too high. The negative impact on the economy is real due to the fluctuation of oil prices on the international market and the unstable exchange rate of the Tunisia dinar.
In 2019, the German International Cooperation Agency financed 2 solar power plants worth $22 million south of the country. The project will produce 36 gigawatts of electricity per year. Tozer will be the first Tunisian governor to meet 100% of its needs in solar energy in the next 2 years. The Ministry of Energy, Mines and Renewable Energies in Tunisia has recently awarded licenses to 4 onshore wind projects totaling 120 megawatts under its authorization scheme for projects in the renewable sector. The projects represent a combined investment of $145 million. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
And heading to South Africa now, the country's first photonics prototyping facility has been unveiled in Pretoria. The facility is aimed at bolstering the country's generation of energy by using light. It is funded by the Department of Science and Innovation and aims to fast-track the product development of photonics technologies and devices. Here's Angelo Coppola reporting.
The facility will address the current lack of commercialized photonics products in South Africa.
And we actually use them in our daily lives, such as cameras on our smartphones, LCDs, fiber communication that gives rise to the internet, as well as laser systems.
One of the first prototypes to emerge from the facility is focused on fingerprints. Fingerprints can erode over time, and this becomes an issue when biometrics are used for identification and access control. Non-contact laser technology is used to solve the problem.
We've used the technology to image the fingertip, and in this way we're able to extract the fingerprint. So it's quite important in certain applications where the surface of the skin is damaged. So as you can see on the screen here, this is a cross-sectional image of the skin, and we actually look about a millimeter below the skin and we're able to extract what we call the internal fingerprint. And this allows for a much more secure system than conventional biometric systems.
Facility will be run like any other business. It starts with building a business model for the client's technology application.
We then take the product in, we have a look at an optomechanical design and exactly what the client wants us to do. We then go ahead and do a complete lab test, and then we start to design where we want to actually compact that entire process and make it usable in the field.
Part of the concept involves creating much needed skills in the country.
Now we've got a huge cohort of TUT interns that work in the facility. These are all mostly black and female, and basically we are trying to address the transformation agenda within the country. So in terms of actual skills development, we train all of these interns to be able to then ideally leave with the product as it goes out. And they can then be in charge of the technical aspects of the product itself.
It's about the fourth industrial revolution. It's also about developing skills in the country and also product that can be used locally and for export purposes. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Tshwane, South Africa.
Now, international ratings agencies have downgraded Ethiopia's long-term foreign and local currency sovereign credit ratings. Both S&P and Fitch ratings agencies say the country's debt burden has been worsened by the pandemic. Now, the coronavirus pandemic has wreaked havoc on Ethiopia's tourism and devastated businesses that are dependent on the sector, as Coletta Wanjohi now reports.
According to rating agency S&P, Ethiopia's public debt stands at about $5.5 billion for the period between 2021 to 2024. Some economists say a downgrade of international credit worthiness by the agencies should not be a cause for worry.
If your private credits outstanding are relatively small compared to your bilateral, I mean, that's the case with Ethiopia. It's mostly bilaterals. It's mostly with DFIs. It's very little, relatively speaking, compared to the outstanding amount what Ethiopia owes to private credit. As I said, there's only one Eurobond for $1 billion. In fact, from what I've seen, the latest number I've seen, this year, the interest payment is only $66 million. Okay, so if that's the profile you're in, and you are not looking to issue in the near future Eurobonds or tap into the global private credit market, don't worry about the short-term hit to your credit ratings.
Fitch Ratings highlights debts from Ethiopian state-owned enterprises to private creditors. Two of them, the national carrier Ethiopian Airlines and telecom company Ethio Telecom, reportedly have an outstanding debt of about $3.3 billion. The Ethiopian government says at the core of its economic reforms is to see that all state-owned enterprises meet payments.
From the balance sheet of the Commercial Bank of Ethiopia, it's not erased. So there will be some restructuring of the remaining debt, which state-owned enterprise has to continue honoring, but it will not come to the budget as well. We will finance it through non-budgetary means. The main source of which we are expecting soon is from privatization proceeds, as well as is also dividend from state-owned enterprise as well.
Ethiopia has applied for debt relief under the G20 program for poor countries. In its defense, Ethiopia says it needs to redirect its resources towards the immunization of its population against COVID-19. The country of over 100 million people will receive about 8 million doses under the COVAX facility supported by the WHO. However, it will need to purchase more vaccines in order to meet the needs of more of its citizens. Other African countries like Chad are seeking relief too. Zemedene Negatu says African countries should focus more on growth than debt.
So I would tell African governments, don't be overly concerned. In fact, take advantage of this unique opportunity that you've been given to reprofile your debt, to restructure, and hopefully to cancel a certain amount of your debt. A year or two, you look pretty to these investors because now they know you've offloaded a lot of your debt. You're in a position to repay them, even with the 7, 8, or 10% yield that they're looking for. So don't be too concerned. Proceed what's in your best interest.
Rating agencies say there are other risks to Ethiopia's debt profile and credit worthiness, including the ongoing conflict in the country's north and tension over upcoming elections. Coletta Wanjohi, CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
And that's all for now on Africa Live Biz. But coming up later on Global Business Africa, the African Development Bank has expressed optimism that the continent will grow by 3.4% this year. And that's despite the coronavirus pandemic. We'll have more on this and other stories coming up at the top of the hour. For now, back to Peninah.
Thank you, Uche. You're watching Africa Live, coming up after the break. Patients with rare skin disease battling social stigma in Kenya's Rift Valley region.
Join us in Global Business and see Africa through our eyes.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Kanata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
In Kenya, people suffering from cutaneous leishmaniasis are facing social stigma due to the disfiguring scars that the illness leaves them with. The disease transmitted by sandflies is classified by the World Health Organization as a neglected tropical disease. CGTN's Enoxi Collier reports that treatment is now being carried out.
Tabitha Wangari is among hundreds of people in Gilgil, central Kenya, affected by this skin disease. It causes multiple sores on the skin, and its name is Cutaneous Leishmaniasis. Wangari's trouble started when she was bitten by a sandfly.
It started like a small pimple, then itching followed.
For almost 3 years, she tried everything in her power to cure her skin.
I was told to be applying herbs. I started applying it in 2018, but after months of doing so, nothing happened. I visited several hospitals, but the illness only continued to spread.
But in 2019, doctors at Gilgil Sub-County Hospital informed her that she has cutaneous leishmaniasis. Wangari says this illness is a source of stigma in this region.
I feel ashamed whenever I go to a place full of people. I try not to have eye contact with people.
But no one understands the stigma associated with cutaneous leishmaniasis than Amos Nene, who transports people on a motorcycle.
It's a wound on my head, so I can't remove my head because of fear. Some people ask if I've been knocked by a lorry. But what hurts me the most is that I can't wear a helmet because if I do that, it'll hurt my head.
Even though treatment of cutaneous leishmaniasis is available, no appropriate cure exists yet.
So far, we've treated about 2,000 persons. Although we believe this is a matter that should attract even international support, because it is one of those very rare and very unique sort of conditions.
Governor Kinyanjui says they are training locals on prevention methods. Repairing cracks in building walls has been identified as an immediate intervention. It helps prevent sandflies from entering their homes.
We want to encourage people within that larger area to grow pyrethrum so that when it is in the environment, it tends to repel them.
Cutaneous leishmaniasis is a parasitic skin infection characterized by slowly healing ulcers that quite often leave indelible scars. Enoxi Collier, CGTN, Nakuru, Kenya.
And coming up in sports, Tunisian swimmer Osama Melouli hoping to end career with 6th consecutive participation in Tokyo.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
We start in North Africa, where Tunisian swimmer Osama Miluli is hoping to qualify for his 6th consecutive Olympic Games in Tokyo. If he successfully clinches a spot in the 10 kilometers open water event, the 37-year-old will be just the 4th swimmer in history to compete in 6 Olympics. At the London Games in 2012, he won gold in the 10-kilometer marathon and bronze in the 1500 meters freestyle to become the first Olympian to win medals in both the open water and the pool in a single Olympics. The Tunisian has been preparing for the Olympic Games by participating in different events, the most recent being the open water marathon, where he did not achieve desired results.
I have to be optimistic and try to learn from this race, which was not a good race for me. I was hoping to do better. There are a lot of things that count against me: the jet lag, the conditions, first race, like you said, and over a year and a half, my age. So yeah, I think I need to put it behind me and focus on the training and stay optimistic and keep working hard towards my goal, which, as you mentioned, will be the Olympic qualifier in end of May.
Elsewhere, Kenya's Harambee Stars have defeated